Hello, this is Kathleen Quaife. Today we're going to look at human proportions and the relationship between human proportions in our figure drawing class. One of the things that we've discussed already is this idea of the head height being an important measurement. If you take this illustration from a Jack Ham book here, you can see 1, 2, 3, 4. That's the halfway mark. 1, 2, 3, 4. And you get 8 heads tall. Here you go, 8 heads tall. It's the average person. Maybe 7.5 to 8 heads tall. It's very different for every individual, but that gives us a place to start. Here's another illustration that shows you the idea of the head, from the top of the head to the bottom of the chin, the skull, and the mandible. You can see it breaks down to right about the middle of the rib cage, being the second end of the second head height, and then about where the belly button would be the third head, the bottom of the pelvis being the fourth one, and then moving down to the figure, you can see that they're into the legs. Here's another illustration. I'm just trying to put a lot of this information in front of you to show you different variations of the theme. But I suspect that most people have been convinced that if they work with the 8 head tall or the 7.5 head tall character, they're going to come up with something that looks sort of like the modern version. Another thing to look at is placing the head on its side, and you can see that's about where the outside of the deltoid would be from the middle of the character. We could also think of the width of the head as being a measurement, and this is a kind of an interesting one. It's called the cranial width. And if you take that circle and sort of square it, we'll get this measurement here that goes from the top of the head to the bottom of the nasal cavity, and that's about the same measurement as the width of the head. We also call this the 5-eye line, because if you had 5 eyes across, you'd get that measurement of the width of the head. And this is going to repeat all over the body. So this is a little bit more complicated, if you will, than just the height of the head. But we're taking the width of the head, it goes down to the pit of the neck, the bottom of the sternum, the 10th rib. And this one here is going to land at the asus, that point on the pelvis that's the furthest point forward. Another measurement goes down, down, down. Here's one that lands at the patella, and then there's 3 more width measurements going down. So this is also called the clavicle length, because if you take that measurement, the width of the head, you can see that's about the clavicle distance, and it's all over the body. It's pretty cool because you can see it's also the height of the scapula, and also it's about the halfway measurement of the pelvis as well. So here's the cranial width measurement broken down again from the bottom of the nasal cavity, pit of the neck, bottom of the sternum, that point on the pelvis that's the furthest point forward, and then the bottom of the pelvis. It's just an interesting thing to be aware of when you're trying to get your measurements more refined, and that's what we're trying to do this week. Here's Clay White, art model that we've worked with, and you can see he's actually demonstrating in the anatomy pose how these measurements could be assigned the clavicle. They call this the sternal T in here, and the measurement is the width of the head or the length of the sternum. It's all over the body, even the scapula. Okay, so something to think about. This whole area is the sternal block. It's not really a block, it's more of an egg shape, but you might be able to see that this square here and this square here and this square could be broken down into even proportions in the rib cage area. And then you can see how you can apply that measurement throughout the body. And not just the arm, but the leg too. That cranial width can also be applied to, well, here it is, the scapula again, the sternum, the rib cage. The distance from the medial area of the body out to where the greater trochanter is, the width of the pelvis, and then how does it relate to the foot, the length of the foot, or the length of the hand. I mean, once you have a measurement, you can start to assess if other parts of the body are bigger or smaller. Basically, if you just kind of think about the width of the head, take a measurement, and look for other relationships, which is what proportions are, relationships of different parts. Another diagram analyzing the width of the head or the 5-eye line. So age and growth, clearly from the age of being an infant all the way to adulthood, the size of the head is going to change, and the spine is going to grow. But here's when you're baby, 1-year-old, you might be 4 heads tall. So things really do change over the years. And here's a diagram. It's very gradual. By adding only 3 inches up and down from the first year to adulthood, the legs grow nearly twice as fast as the torso. There's no exact standard. The adult figure varies from 5 to 8 heads tall. The child's from 4 to 5 heads tall. And when you start to do caricatures, if you want a caricature to be cute, you might give the form a little more baby-like proportions. And if you want to play around with the measurements to elongate things, that's the way we get interesting character designs. And here's some indication of different things you can do, including, sort of fashion illustrations where the legs are extremely long to let the fabric kind of speak. Here's cartoon proportions. Everybody is probably familiar with Stitch, and you can see his proportions are very baby-like. He's just 2 heads tall. If you're going to go into character design work, you'd be creating charts like this called model sheets, where the character's in a turnaround, and you can see that how many heads tall that character is with the lineup that goes behind the form there. Here's some more indications of, radical uses of, different kinds of proportions, and why a character who has those baby-like proportions might seem more appealing, if you want to call Mr. Magoo an appealing character. He's very popular for sure. And that's what we play around with. We play around with proportions to come up with interesting results. Classic idealized proportions now also relate to this idea of this golden rectangle. So let's talk about the golden rectangle. The golden rectangle is a measurement that relates to, it's called phi or phi. Both of those pronunciations are accurate. It's also called the golden number, the divine number, the golden mean, the sacred number, Fibonacci number. But it's a measurement that's based on this number, 1.61803. So what does that mean? It means that if you take this measurement here, this is going to be 6/1/8 of that, 6/1/8 of that. But it's an infinite number, so it goes on and on and on, which is why it's like a divine number. This measurement is all over the human form in so many subtle ways. You're going to find it in relationships of where the belly button is. You're going to find it in facial features. You're going to find it in the growth of fingers. You're going to find it in the inner cochlea of the ear. And you're going to find it in nature all over. So here's some examples of this 1 to 6/1/8 number. There's calipers that can actually take a measurement of the first unit and then see, well, is that second section of it 6/1/8 of the first measurement? But here's some examples from nature. You can see growth patterns in the ear, in peacocks, in shells, in horns, in sunflowers, and in the configuration of your phalanges. And also, artists have represented it, the beauty factor of these idealized proportions. Parts of your body break down from the relationship of the arm to the upper arm to the elbow to the fingertips. You can look at this same relationship, the 1 to 618, from the forearm to the hand. You can find this spiral form in the ear, in the measurements that go out through the phalanges, and over and over and over again. It's the Fibonacci sequence. So as you continue your studies in the human figure, you'll be encountering this idea. Albert Dürer was studying it, Da Vinci was studying it, and recognize that as we play around with proportions, artistic preference is going to be a factor in how you depict this, because it's not just like what's idealized or even what's real. It's like, what do you want to draw is what it gets down to. How can you manipulate this to do the kind of expressive things that you want to do? For instance, fashion photography, or here's a figure on a sculpture on the right. This is Giacometti, and it's not so much just copying nature, it's interpreting things through your very own lens. Now there's other aspects to this, of course, but hopefully that gave you a little bit of an overview.